October 26th, 1804, the Upper Missouri River. The wind does not just blow here, it attacks. It is a constant high-pitched scream that cuts across the barren brown plains of what will one day be North Dakota. For the men of the Corps of Discovery, the world has been reduced to the agonizing rhythm of wood against water. Their hands are raw, the skin split and bleeding from poling their 55-foot keelboat and two smaller pirogues against a current that feels like liquid ice. They have been on the move for 6 months, pushing 1,600 miles from St. Louis into a landscape that grows more alien by the day. Their buckskin and wool uniforms are stiff with river mud and buffalo grease. They are exhausted, not just in body, but in spirit. The Great Plains, this great American desert, has been a void of grass, bison, and sky, punctuated only by brief, tense encounters with tribes like the Teton Sioux. Now, with winter closing in like a trap, they are desperate. They need a safe haven. They are expecting, at best, a few small nomadic camps. Captain William Clark, the expedition's pragmatic co-leader, stands on the bow of the keelboat, his eyes scanning the bluffs. His journal is tucked away. His hands are too numb to write. The river is getting shallow, the channel hard to read. He's looking for any sign of the Arikara, whom they'd passed weeks ago, but finds nothing. The cold is a physical weight. The men mutter, their breath pluming. If they don't find shelter soon, the river will freeze around them, and they will die here. Suddenly, a shout from one of the pirogues. Private John Coulter, his face caked in frost, is pointing frantically to the northeast. Clark raises his brass spyglass. He levels it at the high, wind-swept bluff, his eye tracing the line of the riverbank. At first he sees only the dull brown of the prairie. Then his focus sharpens. He sees movement. Not animals. People. Dozens of them. Then, as the boats grind around a shallow bend, Clark lowers the telescope. His jaw hangs open. Captain Meriwether Lewis, the intense intellectual leader of the expedition, moves to his side, and they both just stare. It is not a camp, it is a city. Sprawled along the river's edge, dominating the bluff, is a sprawling, fortified metropolis. It is a dense, pulsating community of enormous domed structures, dozens and dozens of them, packed tightly together like giant earthen mushrooms. A tall, formidable palisade of cottonwood logs, 16 to 18 feet high, and reinforced by a deep outer ditch, protects the entire settlement. This is not a temporary arrangement. This is a permanent military-grade fortress. From at least 100 of the massive earth lodges, smoke rises in thick grey columns, merging into a haze that hangs over the city. The riverbank itself is alive with activity. Hundreds of people, warriors draped in painted robes, children, elders, are streaming from the gates to get a look at the strange boats. Down by the water, a fleet of perfectly round bull boats, crafted from buffalo hide stretched over willow frames, bob in the eddies. The 40-odd men of the expedition fall silent. The rhythmic splash of the oars ceases. They just drift, gripped by a profound, disorienting awe. This single city before them, which they would learn was called Matutonha, appears to hold more people than the entire American settlement of St. Louis they had left behind. And it is not alone. As they drift further, they see another, similar city on the opposite bank, and further up, at the confluence of the Knife River, 3 more. They have not discovered a wilderness. They have stumbled into the central trading hub of the Northern Plains, a confederation of Mandan and Hidatsa cities with a combined population of over 4,000 souls. On the deck, Sergeant John Ordway nervously checks the primer on his flintlock rifle. The expedition's small swivel cannons are loaded. But Lewis, his mind racing, gives a sharp, clear order. Stand down. Make no hostile sign. They are a tiny military unit, outnumbered 100 to 1. They have not come here as conquerors. They have come as beggars. As the first Mandan dug out canoe, bearing a chief named Black Cat, pushes into the current to greet them. The captains realize a stunning truth. Their maps are wrong, their assumptions are wrong, and their very survival now depends entirely on the goodwill of the powerful, civilized people who live in these impossible cities on the prairie. Previous section text. They are a tiny military unit, outnumbered 100 to 1. They have not come here as conquerors, they have come as beggars. As the first Mandan dugout canoe, bearing a chief named Black Cat, pushes into the current to greet them, the captains realize a stunning truth. Their maps are wrong, their assumptions are wrong, and their very survival now depends entirely on the goodwill of the powerful, civilized people who live in these impossible cities on the prairie. Section 2. The City of Earth and Smoke the dugout canoe, skillfully handled, pulls alongside the keelboat. The man in the center, Black Cat, is stout, with a face of immense dignity, his gaze direct and assessing. He is not the naked savage of European imagination. He is wrapped in a heavy, beautifully painted buffalo robe, the fur turned inward for warmth. His hair is long and plaited. He speaks, his voice a deep baritone, the words sharp and clean, carrying easily over the hiss of the river. The expedition's interpreters, men hired for their skill with the Sioux or Omaha languages, are useless. The Mandan language is unlike anything they have ever heard. It falls to Private François-Antoine Larocque, a French-Canadian trader traveling with them, to attempt communication in plain sign language, the universal lingua franca of the region. Hands move in the cold air. "Who are you? Where do you come from?" Captain Lewis, stepping forward, gestures to the east toward the rising sun. "We are from the land of the Great Father. We come in peace." He points to the frozen ground, then makes the sign for sleep and many. "We wish to winter here." Black Cat watches, his expression unreadable. Then he nods. He makes a gesture of welcome, pointing from the boats to his city on the bluff. "Matutonha," he is inviting them in. "Mr. Clark," Lewis says, his voice low. "Prepare a detail. 6 men, full arms. Bring the air rifle." The keelboat grinds against the muddy bank below the city. As the plank is laid down, the scale of the reception is overwhelming. The entire shore is a mass of humanity, a sea of faces, hundreds of Mandan and their close allies, the Hidatsa, all watching with an intense, piercing curiosity. The Americans, clutching their long-barreled Harper's Ferry rifles, feel impossibly tall, pale, and alien. They are surrounded by the smells of wood smoke, wet fur, and roasted meat. Black Cat leads the way up the steep bank, his moccasins finding easy purchase on the worn path. The captains follow, their heavy leather boots slipping in the mud. As they approach the towering palisade, a gap in the log wall reveals a fortified entryway, a kind of baffled gate designed to break a charging enemy. The moment they step inside, the universe shifts. The screaming wind of the prairie is instantly muted, cut off by the thick earthen walls of the lodges. The air is still, thick with the smell of hundreds of fires. They are standing in a wide, bustling plaza. The ground is hard-packed, worn smooth by generations of foot traffic. It is dense. The great domed lodges, each 40 to 60 feet in diameter, are packed shoulder to shoulder, separated by narrow walkways. Each is a marvel of engineering, a heavy internal frame of massive cottonwood timbers, covered in a complex mat of willow branches, prairie grass, and finally a thick, insulating layer of packed sod and clay, now frozen iron hard. This is a city not of tents, but of houses dogs bark. Children, bundled in furs, run and shout, stopping to stare wide-eyed at the pale men before being shooed away by their mothers. Women carrying water in clay pots balance their burdens with practiced ease. Men are everywhere, some mending tools, others returning from the hunt, their robes caked in snow. Black Cat leads the captains to his own lodge, one of the largest on the plaza. He pulls back a heavy, dried hide door. Lewis and Clark, accustomed to ducking into their cramped canvas tents, instinctively lower their heads. They step through a short, tunnel-like entryway and walk into a cathedral. Inside, it is vast. The ceiling is perhaps 15 feet high, supported by 4 massive, soot-blackened central pillars. In the center, a large, shallow pit glows with a bright, clean fire. The smoke rises in a steady column to a smoke hole in the roof, which also provides the only light. The air is warm, smoky, and alive with the smell of cooking corn and drying meat. For a moment, they are blind. As their eyes adjust, they see that the lodge is a self-contained world. The outer ring is divided into private, partitioned apartments, like stalls, with raised sleeping platforms covered in thick buffalo robes. More than 20 people, multiple families, live here, their belongings stored neatly in rawhide bags. And then, Clark blinks, his mind failing to process the sight. In a partitioned stall on the far side of the lodge, in the warmth, stand 3 of the tribe's most valuable possessions: their horses. They are kept inside, safe from the lethal cold, and, more importantly, from enemy raiders like the Sioux. The captains look at each other. Their men are freezing on the river, and these primitives are living in climate-controlled mansions, so large they have indoor stables. An elderly woman offers them a wooden bowl of hot, bubbling stew, corn, beans, and squash. It is the first truly warm meal they've had in weeks. As Lewis accepts the bowl, his mind, trained in Enlightenment reason, struggles to reconcile the scene. This is a complex, permanent, and comfortable urban society. These are not nomads, these are masters of the prairie. And the core of discovery, clinging to the edge of this continent, suddenly feels very, very far from home. Section 3. The Grand Marketplace of the Plains. The stew is hot, and it is the taste of life itself. Lewis and Clark sit on thick fur robes inside Black Cat's lodge, the central fire warming their faces as the chief and his family look on with a calm, appraising hospitality. The captains, surrounded by the murmur of an unfamiliar language and the smoky warmth, are caught in a moment of profound dislocation. They are the official representatives of the United States government, yet in this lodge they are clearly the supplicants. A council is called, messengers are dispatched, and soon the great lodge fills with the leaders and elders of Matutonha and the neighboring city, Ruptahi. The air grows thick with smoke and the scent of sweetgrass, burned as a purifying incense. Dozens of men, their faces painted in symbolic reds and blacks, their robes intricately quilled, file in and take their places. Their gravity and poise are absolute. This is the moment. Lewis stands. The expedition's newly hired interpreter, René Jassom, who had lived among the Hidatsa, steps forward. It is a clumsy chain of communication. Lewis speaks English, which is translated to French for Jassom, who then translates it into Hidatsa, a language the Mandan chiefs understand. Lewis begins his standard formal speech, the one he has delivered to every tribe downriver. He speaks of a great father in Washington, Thomas Jefferson, who has replaced the Spanish and French. He speaks of a new era of peace, of friendship, and, most importantly, of trade. He promises that American trade goods will soon flow up the river in great abundance, displacing the limited, expensive goods from the British traders in Canada. The chiefs listen, their faces impassive. When Lewis finishes, there is a long, contemplative silence. Then Black Cat and another chief named Sheheke, White Coyote, speak in reply. Their oratory is slow, deliberate, and powerful. They are polite. They welcome the Americans. They, too, want peace. But their words carry an unspoken subtext that Lewis and Clark, masters of frontier diplomacy, understand immediately. These chiefs are not awestruck. They are not conquered. They are negotiating. They've heard promises of new fathers before, from the French, the Spanish, and the British Hudson's Bay Company men who regularly visit from the north. The Mandan are not being discovered. They are vetting a new potential business partner. Then comes the exchange of gifts. Lewis and Clark, with great ceremony, present the chiefs with Jefferson Peace Medals, silver discs bearing the president's image, which they place around their necks. They offer tobacco, blue beads, and a spectacular red-coated officer's uniform, complete with a plumed hat. The chiefs accept these with dignity. In return, they offer the Americans what they truly need: food. They present basket after basket of surplus corn, beans, and dried squash. The disparity is jarring. The Americans have offered symbols of power. The Mandan have offered the very means of survival. Sensing the need for a more potent display, Lewis orders one of his men to bring in the .46 caliber Girandoni air rifle. The chiefs eye the strange Tyrolean-style weapon. It has no flintlock, no powder pan. Lewis, with a showman's flair, cocks the lever of the pressurized air reservoir. He aims at a painted target on the far side of the lodge. A sharp, powerful PFFT. The rifle bucks. A hole appears in the target. The chiefs lean forward, murmuring. But Lewis isn't done. He cocks the lever again. Paft! Another shot. Paft! 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 He fires 10, then 20 rounds in rapid succession, a smokeless, silent barrage of lead. The lodge erupts. This is power. This is medicine they have never seen. The rifle, capable of firing 22 rounds without reloading, is a piece of technology so far advanced it seems supernatural. For the first time, the captains see a flicker of true awe in their hosts' eyes. They have made their point, but the true shock is yet to come. In the following days, William Clark, the cartographer, sets out to understand this place. He walks the 5-mile stretch of prairie connecting the 2 Mandan cities with the 3 even larger cities of their allies, the Hidatsa, at the mouth of the Knife River. It is not a wilderness, it is a main street. The plain is beaten flat by the traffic of thousands. He sees the Hidatsa cities, Metaharta, Mihtutahankush, and realizes their assumptions were laughably small. This is a population of over 4,000 people. He sees their economy. These are not just hunters, they are master horticulturalists. The river bottomlands are a vast, complex patchwork of gardens, now harvested. The women cultivate corn, beans, squash, and sunflowers on a massive scale. They produce such an enormous agricultural surplus that they store it in thousands of bell-shaped cache pits dug deep into the frozen earth. And with this surplus, they control the entire region. This city-state is the fixed central hub of a trade network that spans the continent. The nomadic tribes, the Lakota, the Cheyenne, the Crow, the Assiniboine, who have endless meat and hides but cannot grow corn, must come here to trade. Clark sees Spanish-branded horses from the deep southwest, acquired from the Comanche. He sees British muskets from Canada. He sees obsidian from the distant western mountains and seashells from the Pacific coast. This, he realizes, is the Wall Street of the northern plains. The Mandan and Hidatsa are the power brokers, the middlemen, the bankers. The Corps of Discovery hasn't just found a convenient spot to build a fort. They have stumbled into the most important economic and geopolitical center in the American West, a cosmopolitan metropolis more populous, more powerful, and more commercially sophisticated than any American city west of the Mississippi. Previous section text. To the Corps of Discovery hasn't just found a convenient spot to build a fort. They have stumbled into the most important economic and geopolitical center in the American West, a cosmopolitan metropolis more populous, more powerful, and more commercially sophisticated than any American city west of the Mississippi. Section 4. The Winter Fortress and the Shoshone Key, November 2nd, 1804. The Missouri Riverbank, opposite Matutonha. The river is no longer a road. It is a threat. It is choking on its own ice. Great, slushy pans grind together with a sound like shattering glass, a constant abrasive hiss that signals the window for survival is closing. The Corps of Discovery is in a desperate race against the thermometer, which has already plunged below zero. Captain Lewis selects a site, a low-lying, wooded floodplain directly across from the main Mandan city. It is chosen for its access to timber, a resource the Mandan themselves lack, having cleared the bluffs long ago. The order is given. Build. The men, already weakened by their 600-mile journey, throw themselves into the work with a frenzied, desperate energy. They are soldiers, boatmen, and frontiersmen, but now they must become carpenters and engineers in the worst conditions imaginable. The axes ring against the hard, frozen cottonwood. This is not the strong, straight oak of their native Virginia. It is a soft, fibrous wood that dulls their blades and splits unpredictably. The ground is iron. Digging foundation posts is a grueling battle, a few inches at a time. For weeks, the only sounds are the thud of axes, the curses of the men, and the cracking of the ice-filled river. They are building a crude, V-shaped fortress, a structure of profound military utility. 2 long, parallel rows of log huts are built, their roofs angled inward to form a defensible perimeter. The open, river-facing side of the V will be sealed with a high, sharp picket fence stockade, complete with a gate and a sentry platform. They will call it Fort Mandan. It is a raw, ugly American scar on the ancient landscape, a statement of intent. And from the bluffs across the river, the Mandan watch. Wrapped in their heavy white winter robes, they stand in clusters, observing the frantic, clumsy industry of the pale men. While the Americans freeze, curse, and battle the elements to construct their cramped, angular box, the Mandan live in warmth and comfort. Their great, domed lodges, masterpieces of passive solar design and earth insulation, are so warm that the old and young can sit inside in comfort. The Americans are building a fort. The Mandan are already home. By mid-November, the fort is habitable, if not comfortable. The river freezes solid, a sheet of milky ice 3 feet thick, and with that, the world changes. The river is no longer a barrier, it is a highway. The social isolation of the expedition evaporates. Every day the gates of Fort Mandan are opened, and the Mandan and Hidatsa stream in. It is not an invasion, it is a social call. The fort becomes the season's greatest curiosity. The chiefs, Black Cat, Sheheke, the one-eyed Hidatsa chief Laborgne, are constant visitors, holding councils with the captains, smoking, and trading information. The Mandan are fascinated by the Americans, by their pale skin, their hairy faces, their disciplined military drills. But most of all, by 2 things: the expedition's lone black man, York, and the forge. York, William Clark's enslaved man, is a sensation. The Mandan have never seen a man with black skin. They crowd around him, rub his skin with a wetted finger to see if the color comes off, and are astonished by his sheer size and strength. He is Big Medicine, a figure of supernatural power, and he leans into the role, telling tales of his prowess. The second marvel is the forge, run by Private John Shields. The Mandan have metal, scraps of British kettles, old Spanish bridle bits, arrowheads, but they have no way to forge it. Shields is not just a blacksmith, he is a wizard. With his bellows and anvil, he takes a piece of a broken iron stove, intended for the keel boat, and hammers it into a fierce, sharp war axe. Word spreads like fire. Suddenly, the Mandan and Hidatsa are not just offering friendship, they are offering business. The expedition's supply of cheap trade beads is running low, but the forge gives them a new currency. Warriors line up outside the fort, not for medals, but for shields. They bring bushels of corn, beans, and dried meat, piling it high. In exchange, Shields repairs their tools, sharpens their axes, and, for a high price, forges the coveted metal war axes. This single act of technological exchange, the sound of hammer on hot iron, does more to secure the expedition's survival than any diplomatic speech. It is this trade that will feed 40 men through the brutal 40 below zero winter. It is in this bustling, social, cross-cultural environment that a new figure appears at the fort. He is a French-Canadian trader named Toussaint Charbonneau, a blustery, unimpressive man who has lived among the Hidatsa for years. He comes to the captains in late November, offering his services as an interpreter. The captains are unimpressed by him. He is cowardly and speaks little English. But they are not looking at Charbonneau. They are looking at the two young women who follow him timidly into the fort, his wives. One of them, a girl of perhaps 16, is heavy with child. She is quiet, her gaze downcast. Her name, they are told, is Sacagawea. Lewis and Clark, who have spent every waking moment grilling the Mandan and Hidatsa for information about the lands to the west, suddenly go still. Charbonneau mentions, almost as an afterthought, that this girl is not a local. She is a Shoshone, a Snake Indian, captured by a Hidatsa war party from the distant Stony Mountains years ago. It is a lightning bolt. The captains know their route. They know that after leaving the plains, they must ascend the Missouri to its source, deep in the Rocky Mountains. They know they must abandon their boats. They know they will need horses to cross the great, shining mountains, the Continental Divide. And they know, from Mandan intelligence, that the only people who have those horses are the Shoshone. And here, in their fort, is a girl who speaks the language. A girl who was born in those mountains. The captains look at each other. This is not a coincidence. This is providence. They immediately agree to hire Charbonneau, not for his meager skills, but to secure the services of his young, pregnant, captive wife. As the first true blizzard of the winter screams across the prairie, burying Fort Mandan in a 6-foot drift of snow, the captains realize their single greatest strategic asset is not their air rifle, nor their forge. It is this teenage girl who holds the key to the continent locked in her memory. January 10th, 1805. The center of the world, 41 degrees below zero. The cold is not a temperature. It is a physical enemy. It is a solid, invisible wall that presses against the green wood huts of Fort Mandan. The air is so sharp it sears the lungs, and a man's spittle freezes into a solid bead of ice before it even hits the ground. Sentries, posted on the stockade, are relieved every 30 minutes, their faces covered in masks of ice, their senses so dull they can barely feel their own feet. Inside the cramped American quarters, it is a smoky, damp, twilight hell. The green cottonwood logs, the only fuel available, pop and hiss in the clay and stick chimneys, refusing to burn clean. They produce more acrid smoke than heat, filling the rooms with a grey haze that stings the eyes and blackens the walls. Captain Lewis, trying to write in his journal, must mix his ink with whiskey to keep it from turning to slush, and even then he must write within feet of the fire. The men, bored, cold, and suffering from scurvy, are on edge. Then a knock at the gate. A group of Mandan men and women, who have just walked 3 miles across the frozen, wind-scoured river, are here to visit. The Americans, bundled in every layer they own, open the gate to a people who seem completely indifferent to the lethal cold. The Mandan are wearing buffalo robes, fur side in, and artfully constructed moccasins insulated with dry grass. They are laughing, their faces painted, their spirits high. They enter the dark, smoky American huts with curiosity and a faint, unspoken pity. The captains, desperate for diplomacy and simple human contact, return the visits. They walk across the ice highway to Matutonha. They step from the howling white void of the prairie, through the tunnel-like hide door, and into a different climate. Black Cat's Lodge is not just warm, it is alive. The central fire burns bright and clean. The Mandan use dry, seasoned wood, a resource they manage with meticulous care. The air is smoky, but it moves, rising to the smoke hole 15 feet above. Dozens of people are here. Elders sit on willow backrests, telling stories. Children play a game with polished stones. Women, working in groups, are tanning hides, their hands moving with practiced, efficient, grace. It is a stunning, damning comparison. The Americans are surviving. The Mandan are living. This winter becomes the great first classroom of the American West. The Corps of Discovery is not a military force. It is an ethnological expedition, and the Mandan are their professors. The captains, their journals perpetually open, become students of Prairie geopolitics. They learn that the Mandan and Hidatsa are the fixed agricultural center of a massive, violent wheel. The Lakota Sioux are their mortal enemies to the south. The Assiniboine, their unreliable trading partners to the north. The Americans are now a new piece on this ancient chessboard. The Mandan chiefs, particularly Black Cat, are not just being hospitable. They are assessing their new guests as potential allies. They want American guns and American partnership in their war against the Sioux. Lewis, bound by Jefferson's directive to forge peace with all tribes, is forced to deflect. "We are the friends of all," he insists in council after council. The Great Father wants the road of trade to be open for everyone. This neutrality frustrates the Mandan, but the American forge continues to burn hot. Private Shields is, in effect, the expedition's sole financier. Every day, Mandan and Hidatsa warriors arrive, not with diplomatic questions, but with broken muskets from British traders or scraps of metal, shields, hammers, mends, and forges. In return, a steady stream of corn, the Mandan cash, flows into the fort's near-empty storehouses. Without that corn, the expedition would have starved to death by February. But the most profound shock is not political or economic, it is cultural. One evening, a Mandan man, a respected warrior, makes an offer to one of the American soldiers. It is a gesture of ultimate hospitality, a way to bind a visitor in a bond of kinship. He offers his wife for the night. This is not prostitution, it is a formal social custom. To the young, isolated American men, this is a stunning, confusing event. To the captains, it is a social minefield. They see the devastating impact of venereal disease, which their own men have carried up the river, beginning to spread through the villages. They see the social fabric being tested. This civilized city has a moral code so different from their own, it challenges their very definition of the word. As the winter grinds on, a human drama is unfolding in a small hut near the fort. Sacagawea, the Shoshone key, is in labor. It is a long, agonizing, and difficult birth. She is in pain for days. On February 11, 1805, Lewis, the expedition's doctor, is desperate. He is told by a French trader that a rattlesnake rattle, crushed and mixed with water, is a powerful medicine to speed birth. Lewis, a man of science, is skeptical, but has no other options. He prepares the dose. Within 10 minutes of drinking it, Sacagawea gives birth to a healthy baby boy, Jean-Baptiste Charbonneau. As the baby cries for the first time, a new sound in the frozen world, the captains look at the child. The winter is breaking. The ice on the river is groaning. And their key to the continent is no longer just a captive girl. She is a mother, with a newborn infant she will have to carry across the unknown mountains. The true journey is about to begin. Previous section text, Tutuast. As the baby cries for the first time, a new sound in the frozen world, the captains look at the child. The winter is breaking, the ice on the river is groaning, and their key to the continent is no longer just a captive girl. She is a mother, with a newborn infant she will have to carry across the unknown mountains. The true journey is about to begin. Section 6. The Departure from the Center of the World, April 7th, 1805. The Banks of the Missouri River. The world cracks open with a sound like artillery. For 2 weeks, the Missouri River has been a roaring, chaotic mass of grinding ice, a 10-foot-high wall of churning, pulverized flows sweeping past Fort Mandan. Now the main channel is clear, a brown, angry, and liberated torrent. The air is no longer sharp with frost. It is soft, carrying the smell of wet earth and the distant returning geese. The gates of Fort Mandan are wide open, and the scene is one of organized, frenetic chaos. The Corps of Discovery is splitting in two. Captain Lewis is supervising the loading of the expedition's main vessel, the 55-foot keelboat. But this boat is not heading west. It is facing east, downstream. Its cargo is the entire winter's worth of intelligence. Crates are carefully lowered aboard, filled with dried plant specimens, mineral samples, the skeletons of unknown prairie dogs and antelope, and, most importantly, the letters and journals of the captains. In one watertight tin box, William Clark's new, astonishingly accurate map of the river, based on Mandan geographic intelligence, is the expedition's first great prize. This return party, commanded by Corporal Richard Worthington, will carry the first proof back to Thomas Jefferson. Proof that the West is not what he thought. On the riverbank next to the keelboat, the permanent party looks small, fragile, and utterly outmatched. Their fleet now consists of 2 pirogues and 6 small, roughly hewn dugout canoes, which the men had carved from cottonwood trees during the winter's coldest days. This is the group that will go on, into the total unknown, toward the mountains. Their numbers are smaller, their supplies are dwindling, but their ranks have changed. Toussaint Charbonneau fusses with a bundle, and beside him, Sacagawea, barely 2 months after giving birth, settles her infant son, Jean-Baptiste, into a cradleboard, which she will carry on her back. A native woman with a baby is now a core member of this American military expedition. The entire population of the Mandan and Hidatsa cities has gathered on the bluffs and along the riverbank to watch. This is the most significant event of the season. Chiefs Black Cat, Sheheka, and the formidable Hidatsa leader Libornia stand at the water's edge, their painted robes drawn tight. They have come for a final council, a final exchange of gifts. The Mandan have brought more corn, a final life-sustaining offering to the departing Americans. The chiefs make their final speeches. They are not just saying goodbye. They are making a final political plea, urging the captains to remember their alliance, to send the promised American guns, and to help them in their endless war against the Sioux. Lewis and Clark, standing on the deck of a pirogue, make their own promises. They promise that the Great Father will not forget them, that traders will come. But as they look at their own men, the 31 souls who will continue west, the captains see the profound, irreversible change. These are not the same soldiers who paddled upriver in October. Their faces are leaner, their eyes wiser, their skin weathered to a dark leather. Their American uniforms are in tatters, replaced or heavily patched with Mandan-tanned buckskin. They have survived a winter that should have killed them, not because of their own superiority, but because of the grace, power, and overwhelming surplus of the people they had come to discover. Lewis turns for a final look at Matutonha, the great, smoking city on the bluff. It is no longer a shock. It is a fact, a fixed, permanent center of power in a land they had been told was empty. They had arrived expecting a wilderness and found a metropolis. They had come expecting primitive nomads and found a sophisticated agricultural society that operated a trade network spanning the continent. They had come as explorers and had been forced to become students, beggars, and blacksmiths, trading their best technology for simple corn to stay alive. The captains had been stunned, not just by the great earth lodges, but by the shattering realization that their maps, their assumptions, and their entire Enlightenment-born concept of civilization were wrong. The West was not empty. It was full. Set off, Lewis commands. The horns and fiddles of the expedition strike up a tune. The heavy dugout canoes dig into the brown, churning current. As the return party turns its bow toward St. Louis and home, the permanent party turns its bow west, toward the mountains, toward a map that, after this point, is completely, terrifyingly blank. They are not just paddling into the unknown, they are paddling away from the single greatest center of power, comfort, and civilization they would know for the next 2 years.